I'm Ashley Vance, and I was 26 years old when I learned that sometimes a little gum can make a big point. I lived in Oak Haven, Connecticut, a cozy town where everyone seemed to know everyone else, or at least they knew your cousin. My life was pretty organized back then. I worked as a junior event coordinator, which meant I spent my days making sure details were perfect, from floral arrangements to guest lists. I believed in polite conversation, neat appearances, and solving problems with a calm, reasonable approach. My apartment was always tidy, my calendar meticulously planned, and my social interactions carefully considered. I always tried to be a good person, to be kind and understanding, even when others weren't. This particular Saturday evening was supposed to be a nice break from my usual routine. My friend Chloe had invited me to a backyard gathering at a beautiful house just outside of town. It was a chance to relax, meet some new people, and enjoy the early summer air. I put on a pretty floral dress, did my hair in soft waves, and even baked a batch of my famous lemon bars to bring along. I arrived feeling optimistic, ready for pleasant conversations and good company. The party was lively, with string lights draped across the trees and a warm breeze carrying the scent of grilling food. I mingled, chatted with a few familiar faces, and even made a new acquaintance or two. The evening was going exactly as I had hoped, a perfect blend of social engagement and relaxed enjoyment. Then I found myself in a small group near the patio discussing local art with a charming couple. That's when she appeared, a woman with long, almost aggressively blonde hair and an air of complete self-importance. I'd seen her around Oak Haven before, but we had never properly met. Her name was Tiffany, or at least that's what I overheard someone call her. She wedged herself into our circle, pulled out a cigarette, and without a word lit it up. I don't mind people smoking in designated areas, but she was standing so close that the first puff of smoke drifted right into my face. I coughed subtly, hoping she would notice. She didn't. I continued to talk, trying to ignore the acrid smell stinging my nose, but Tiffany seemed to make it her mission to annoy me. With every exhale, she turned her head slightly, making sure the plume of smoke enveloped my personal space. It wasn't just accidental. After the third time, when a thick cloud of smoke made my eyes water, I decided to be polite but firm. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice even and friendly. "Would you mind blowing your smoke in another direction? It's getting a bit much." Tiffany turned her head, her eyes, framed by heavily applied eyeliner, gave me a slow, assessing look. A smirk played on her lips. She took another long drag from her cigarette and, holding my gaze, deliberately blew the smoke directly into my face again, a little puff of defiance, and then she let out a short, dismissive laugh. My jaw tightened. I was caught off guard, completely flustered by her outright rudeness. I moved a step to my left, trying to put some distance between us, but she simply pivoted, keeping me in her smoky crosshairs. It was like she enjoyed watching me squirm. The evening, which had started so perfectly, now felt tainted. My problem wasn't just the smoke, it was her blatant disrespect, her open challenge to my request, and the public humiliation of being treated like I didn't matter. I hated feeling so powerless, so unseen. This wasn't how I operated, this wasn't how I handled conflicts. My usual calm, reasonable approach had utterly failed. Tiffany, with her mocking laughter and clouds of smoke, had become my nemesis, and I felt a growing knot of frustration in my stomach. I was unsatisfied with how things were, not just because of the discomfort, but because it felt like she was actively trying to ruin my good time and succeeding. I tried to solve the problem multiple times, each effort feeling more futile than the last. First, I attempted to simply shift my position again, trying to subtly move away from her. But every time I took a step, she'd adjust, ensuring that the noxious plume of smoke found its way back to me. It was like a cruel game of cat and mouse, and I was definitely the mouse. My polite request had been met with a sneer, and now any movement I made was met with another deliberate exhale in my direction. The problem wasn't just physical discomfort, it was a psychological assault, a continuous reminder that she held power over my personal space and my peace of mind. I considered asking the charming couple I had been talking to for help, or perhaps for them to vouch for me, but they had slowly drifted away, clearly uncomfortable with the escalating tension between Tiffany and me. I felt abandoned and even more exposed. Then I tried to ignore her completely. I turned my back, engaging in conversation with someone else who had joined the group, but even with my back turned, I could feel the presence of the smoke, the faint scent clinging to my hair and clothes, a constant reminder of Tiffany's presence. It was impossible to fully escape. I even went inside for a while, hoping that by the time I returned, she would have moved on or left the party altogether. I spent a good 20 minutes in the kitchen, pretending to help the host, feeling silly for letting someone else dictate my enjoyment of an event. When I ventured back out, my heart sank. There she was, still in the same general area, laughing loudly with a group and still holding that lit cigarette. She even seemed to spot me and gave me a little wave, a wave that felt more like a taunt. The problem grew bigger and more serious. It wasn't just about the smoke anymore. It was about my pride, my ability to stand up for myself, and the feeling that I was being bullied in a public setting. I felt my usual calm demeanor crumbling. I wasn't just annoyed, I was angry, a simmering, unfamiliar heat building inside me. All my efforts to be polite, to be reasonable, to simply avoid the situation had not only failed but had somehow made things worse. Each time she blew smoke in my face and laughed, it chipped away at my self assurance. I felt like a foolish girl, unable to handle a simple social interaction. My internal monologue was a flurry of questions. Why couldn't she just be a decent human being? Why was I letting her get to me so much? Why couldn't I just say something harsher, something that would make her stop? But my nature held me back. I wasn't someone who caused scenes. I valued harmony. This internal conflict was exhausting. I was spiraling into a low point. The party, which I had looked forward to, was completely ruined. I could barely enjoy any conversation, always aware of her presence, always bracing myself for the next puff of smoke. My beautiful floral dress felt sticky, my hair smelled of stale tobacco, and my carefully planned evening was a disaster. I felt completely defeated, small and insignificant. All the positive energy I had brought to the party had been drained away, replaced by a bitter resentment. I just wanted to go home to escape her, to wash away the feeling of being disrespected. But leaving felt like a surrender, like letting her win completely. I kept telling myself, Ashley, you need to be better than this. Don't stoop to her level. Yet a little voice, a darker, more mischievous voice, started to whisper something else. It said, what if you didn't have to stoop? What if you could make her regret this without anyone even knowing? As the evening wore on, the alcohol flowed and the music grew louder. I found myself wandering near the edge of the crowd, observing Tiffany. She was still holding court, still smoking, still laughing that grating laugh. I watched her long, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, which she kept flipping dramatically, almost as if she knew how much she loved it. My mind, usually so orderly and rational, began to wander into territory I rarely visited. I was at my lowest point, feeling truly helpless and pushed to the absolute limit. It was in that moment of despair and frustration that a tiny, mischievous spark ignited. All my carefully constructed politeness had got me nowhere. Perhaps it was time for a different approach, one that didn't involve confrontation, but instead a quiet, personal kind of justice. I saw Chloe, my friend, walking past, heading toward the cooler. Hey, Chloe, I called out, trying to sound casual. Do you have any gum in your purse? My mouth feels a little dry. Chloe, always prepared, rummaged in her bag and handed me a small packet of spearmint chewing gum. A single stick. I took it, my fingers brushing against hers, and a strange calm settled over me. This was it. This was my moment. This was my last-ditch effort. I chewed the gum slowly, letting the cool mint flavor spread through my mouth. My heart was pounding, a wild drum against my ribs, but my face remained neutral, almost serene. I watched Tiffany from a distance, calculating my move. The party was winding down and people were starting to say their goodbyes. This was the perfect cover. I needed to act fast to make it quick and clean. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. This wasn't me, Ashley Vance, the polite event coordinator. This was a different Ashley, an Ashley who had been pushed too far, an Ashley who was about to deliver a very personal message. As I approached the group Tiffany was still with, I put on my most charming farewell smile. I started making my rounds, saying goodbye to various people, exchanging pleasantries. I made sure to take my time building up to her. When I finally reached Tiffany, she was still holding a half-smoked cigarette, blowing out a stream of smoke even as she acknowledged other people. I caught her eye. Hey, Tiffany, I said, my voice sweet and steady. I just wanted to say goodbye and tell you it was great talking to you tonight. Her eyes narrowed slightly, probably trying to figure out if I was being sarcastic, but my smile was unwavering. She gave a little shrug, a puff of smoke escaping her lips. Yeah, sure, whatever, she mumbled, clearly not remembering our earlier hostile interactions or perhaps just not caring. And you know, I continued, stepping a little closer, no hard feelings about all the smoke in my face, really. A flicker of recognition, or maybe just mild surprise, crossed her face, and then she let out that same dismissive chuckle, the one that had grated on my nerves all evening. She probably thought I was finally giving in, accepting her rude behavior. That was her mistake. I extended my arms, gesturing for a friendly hug. Her eyes widened slightly, a hint of confusion, but then she shrugged again, probably thinking I was just being overly sweet or perhaps a little tipsy. She leaned in, awkwardly returning the embrace. Her long blonde hair, which she had so proudly flipped and tossed all night, was right there. This was it. This was the moment I had rehearsed in my mind. As she hugged me, I quickly, almost imperceptibly, took the well-chewed piece of spearmint gum from my mouth. In one swift, fluid motion, I pressed it firmly against the underside of a thick strand of her beautiful, golden hair, right near the nape of her neck, where it would be difficult to spot immediately but impossible to ignore later. I held it there for just a split second, making sure it stuck, then I pulled back, still smiling. So nice to meet you, really, I said, a genuine thrill running through me, a sense of vindication that was both unsettling and utterly satisfying. I released her from the embrace and quickly melted back into the departing crowd, my mission accomplished. The consequences of my choice were poetic. Tiffany would likely not discover the gum until she was home, perhaps unwinding, perhaps running her fingers through her precious hair. The public humiliation she had inflicted on me would be repaid in a private, infuriating struggle to remove a sticky, minty mess from her prized locks. It wouldn't be dramatic, it wouldn't be a scene, but it would be effective. I left the party feeling lighter, a strange blend of guilt and exhilaration bubbling inside me. The night air felt cooler, cleaner. I wasn't the same Ashley Vance who had arrived, full of polite expectations. I had pushed back, quietly but decisively. The next morning, I woke up feeling a little mischievous, a secret smile playing on my lips. My clothes still smelled faintly of smoke, but now it felt like a badge of honor, a reminder of the battle I had fought and in my own way won. My new normal wasn't about being confrontational, but it was about understanding that sometimes polite requests simply aren't enough. Sometimes a quiet, unexpected act of defiance is necessary to protect your peace and reclaim your dignity. I realized I was capable of more than just polite deference. I was capable of a little bit of cunning, a little bit of calculated revenge when absolutely necessary. My neatly organized world now had a small, delightful smudge of chaos, and I found I didn't mind it at all. A few days later, while I was at the local coffee shop, I overheard a conversation between two women. One of them, a mutual acquaintance, was recounting a story with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. "You will not believe what happened to Tiffany Johnson the other night after Chloe's party," she said, lowering her voice conspiratorially. She apparently went home and found a giant wad of chewing gum stuck deep in her hair. She had to cut a huge chunk out. She was absolutely furious, throwing a fit about how someone must have done it on purpose. She was blaming everyone, saying it was a deliberate attack on her expensive highlights. The other woman gasped. I pretended to be absorbed in my latte, a slow, knowing smile spreading across my face. It was the perfect twist, the confirmation I hadn't known I needed. My petty revenge wasn't just petty, it was a permanent, visible reminder of her rudeness, a little piece of sticky karma she couldn't just brush off. I finished my coffee, feeling utterly fulfilled, knowing that Tiffany had indeed gotten her lesson, one stubborn, minty strand at a time.